Ladies and gents, this is none other than the new ROG phone, or rather ROG Phone, because it really rocks. Ah, how was that? Cringe, right? But yes, in truth, it rocks. It is the first phone of the 2024 lineup, and the beast from Asus has reached the model number 8. It doesn't mean it's the 8th one, because there was no number 4 due to Chinese superstitions, but I won't elaborate on that here. And I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to it and how excited I was to see it. And the two important things to be said about it are these. First, it's different from the previous shiny gaming phones of this series. And I don't know if that's good or bad, it depends on the perspective you look at it from. With the current phone, what strikes you is that it no longer strikes you. What I mean is that I've gotten used to the ROG Phone being flamboyant, loaded with design elements, each more gamer-esque than the last, screens on the back, loud colors and graphics, unreasonable dimensions, all kinds of useless gaming functions and features. But you see, that's precisely where the charm of this phone lied. Now it's more subdued, almost too subdued. Of course, its more restrained, tamer design will certainly make it desirable to a much wider audience, but somehow it seems to lose its identity, that DNA that made it special, unique. Like, if it's an ROG phone, then it should be flashy, crazy, different. Well, no more. The ROG Phone is now simpler, more minimalist, sober. Asus, what have you done with my multicolored ROG Phone? But we'll discuss the design in more detail later on. And the second important observation would be that we are not allowed in this video to publish certain things, namely the processor's performance in synthetic tests and in games. Oh my, but why? Well, let me guess. Not to steal the limelight from the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Oops, come again? Let me tell you how I think it is. This is the first phone of the year that comes with the new and much discussed processor from Qualcomm, Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. With this processor, Qualcomm boasts that it will make a hole in the sky and that it marks the start of a new era of artificial intelligence on phones. But guess what? On January the 17th, the new S24 series from Samsung is launched, that is, next week. Quite a coincidence, isn't it? And when Samsung is the top dog in the smartphone market, it was natural for Asus not to get the green light for test results and spoil the party. But on the other hand, I don't think anyone stops us from telling you how well it runs without going into details related to numbers. Fair enough, right? I mean, we don't discuss those X points in Geekbench or 3D Mark or the number of frames per second in Asphalt, but we will rather paint a more impressionistic picture about how it feels and how well it runs. And now let's start this review and see what's what. Just as we have a new iPhone and a new Galaxy S every year, Asus has made it a habit to release a new ROG Phone annually, a beast with the fastest components and the most robust cooling, especially since the beast is dedicated to gaming. And while a new version of the phone is here, under the name ROG Phone 8 Pro, the company's approach seems to be different from the past. Allow me to explain. If you're in the market for a top phone and you open the Asus catalog, the options there are two. The small Zenfone 10, a small-sized jewel with very good specifications, and the legendary ROG Phone, the phone dedicated to the most purist and hardcore mobile gamers. But what do you do if you want something in between? What's the solution if you want a phone with a larger screen than the one on Zenfone 10, more practical, but you don't want the piece of metal and glass that you will carry around for the next years to scream, look at me, I'm a gamer"? Well, until now, the answer was to get a phone from any other brand, and probably because of that, Asus is now trying to blur the line between a regular flagship and a dedicated gaming phone. The new ROG Phone 8 is much thinner than the old models, which of course entails some sacrifices, but more on that later. It is a bit more compact and clearly more subdued from the design perspective. But the good part is that it comes with the same over-the-top features that gamers have come to appreciate in this series. But that being said, the question for me is this. With these changes, has the ROG Phone become a desirable alternative also for those who aren't keen on gaming aesthetics but want something ultra performant? So, what changes has Asus made to turn the consecrated gaming beast into a phone more friendly for everyday use? And the first point where the manufacturer has seriously modified the initial formula is in terms of dimensions. The new ROG Phone 8 Pro is over 1.5 millimeters thinner than the previous model, and believe me when I say that the difference is noticeable. The new phone is more manageable, easier to use and more comfortable in your hand, so we have the first victory in practicality. And not only has the phone's thickness been significantly reduced, but also the edges of the screen. The ROG Phone 7 had some sizable bezels at the top and bottom, a characteristic design choice of the series up to this point. No more, because Asus managed to reduce the top edge by 71% and the side by 14%, now making the screen truly edge-to-edge. Well, except for the selfie camera, which is now a cutout in the middle of the display. Although this is largely good, here we see the first sacrifice Asus had to make. Instead of the front-facing stereo speaker system that had its place in those thick edges mentioned before, the new phone has to settle for an audio system placed in a traditional format, an amplified earpiece and a full speaker on the bottom edge. This translates into a somewhat weaker audio experience with less spaciousness and definition. However, the speakers themselves are not bad, the sound is clean and the volume is more than sufficient. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to consider. Still, if you prefer to listen to music on headphones or don't want any lag when you play games, Asus has also included the old headphone jack, a feature many manufacturers have chosen to eliminate for good. Anyway, I'm glad to see it here. Also, in terms of overall design, we have major changes, the main one being the camera module on the back. Asus aims to make the ROG Phone as versatile as possible, so the assembly of cameras on the back has received massive hardware improvements with a 50 megapixels main sensor with enhanced gimbal stabilization, which we will discuss a bit later. But this also means that the thickness of the camera island had to increase as well. It's almost comically protruding, and good luck using this phone on a table. However, it doesn't look bad at all, and the new, more square shape fits well with the phone's design language. And there's also a hard case found in the phone's massive package. It seems they haven't yet given up on opulent packaging, and this hard case levels the back of the phone so it doesn't wobble like a ship in a storm when it sits on a table. As for the appearance itself, the new ROG Phone 8 Pro is categorically more elegant and cleaner than the previous model. The back is made of a very pleasant matte glass, and at least at first glance, you would say that Asus has abandoned the extra mini display on the back or the illuminated logo, element specific to the series. But in reality, the manufacturer has done something even cooler, which I admit I'm quite fond of. It has integrated an anime matrix display under the glass on the back, similar to those we've seen on the lids of some ROG laptops. You can configure this display as you wish and can add new animations, but you also have the option to completely deactivate it in case you want your phone to not stand out at all, thus reinforcing the idea of a generalist phone suitable for any occasion, not just gaming sessions. Moreover, given that the entire back of the phone is now a single piece of glass, the ROG Phone 8 Pro is the first gaming phone in this series with IP68 water and dust resistance, a highly practical and welcome feature. However, to accommodate the new anime matrix display in a thinner chassis, a compromise had to be made, and in this case, it was the battery that suffered, at least on paper, a downgrade. Specifically, the battery on the ROG Phone 8 Pro is 5500 mAh, 500 less than the 6000 mAh battery on the ROG Phone 7 Pro. In reality, however, thanks to the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chipset under the hood, the one I mentioned in the intro that we're not allowed to give numbers and details about, the actual autonomy is extremely close to that of the previous model, so no harm was done. In the name of practicality, Asus continues to include a large and fast 65-watt charger in the package, capable of charging the phone from 0 to 100% in just 39 minutes, a performance worthy of such a flagship. We tested it ourselves, and the charging times are as specified by the manufacturer. And last but not least, wireless charging also received some attention, and now the phone charges at 15 watt wirelessly. In the opulent package, as befits an ROG phone, in addition to the charger, you will find the new Aero Active Cooler X, the latest iteration of the ROG Phone's external active cooling system. In short, it's a pretentious name for an external fan that attaches to the back of the phone and contributes to optimal cooling when you push it to the max in games. And I have some interesting things to say about this. It has a contact surface with the back of the phone over 2.5 times larger than the previous model, and the fan spins 10% faster. This, combined with a more efficient internal component layout and a new element called Rapid Cooling Conductor, which aims to transfer heat from the back glass as efficiently and quickly as possible, is set to translate into a performance that is 20% better than the previous model. Not a small value. In addition, the new cooler is almost 30% smaller in volume and is also 10% lighter than the old model, which makes it even more portable. So we see improvements across the board. And that's enough with the percentages. And here we are, having gotten this far without discussing the display, one of the main attractions of the ROG Phone 8 Pro. So let's rectify that. The panel is a 6.78-inch flexible AMOLED with a maximum refresh rate of 165 Hz and a brightness that can reach the colossal value of 2500 nits. It's superb, extremely fast, has pleasant colors and is also very, very bright. It's also worth mentioning that the adaptive refresh rate, that feature that saves battery by reducing the frame rate when the screen displays a static image, is only available in the 1 to 120 Hz mode. That means the refresh rate can drop to a minimum of 1 Hz and can go up to a maximum of 120, and the display's full 165 Hz capability is not utilized. If you want the screen to be as fast as possible, you can activate this in the settings, but be prepared to feel quite a serious hit when it comes to battery life. You win some, you lose some. And after telling you a bit about one of the coolest screens I've ever tried, let's see what all this is for. That is, I propose we return to the origins and the reason why the first ROG phone saw the light of the day in 2018, to be the best gaming phone. And I say with genuine delight that the new model does not disappoint, as you might be tempted to believe, being thinner, less flashy, and with a smaller battery. But before anything, I must repeat the mention from the intro. Although I know you are eager to see the results of the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in synthetic tests, to know the performance boost compared to the previous generation, and perhaps even more importantly, to find out how close Qualcomm's flagship has come to Apple's A17 Pro, we're not allowed to show that with points and scores. Instead, I can tell you about my actual experience in games, and that's a chapter where I really have nothing to reproach the ROG Phone 8 Pro for. Every title I installed ran brilliantly, from the eternal but still very popular Genshin Impact to Call of Duty Mobile and Asphalt 9. I encountered no lag, everything worked exceptionally well, and like all other ROG Phone models, gaming is a pleasure on this phone. And why wouldn't it be? The fabulous specimen in my hand has no less than, are you holding on tight, 24 gigs of RAM and a quick 1 terabyte of storage. But I can give you some hints regarding performance. I set the battery settings in X mode, that is the maximum performance mode, and I pushed it to the metal. I can't reveal the actual results, but I can tell you they are out of this world. And that Samsung's flagship, the S24 Ultra, which is set to appear next week, has a hell of a powerful rival for the crown, even though that one will most likely come with an even faster version of this processor, that for Samsung iteration. The huge amount of memory and excellent cooling on the ROG phone will give S24 Ultra a run for its money. So, the speed is mind-blowing and, shall I say it, Apple's reign in terms of raw performance is beginning to come to an end. That's it? Shh, zip tight. What, did I give any scores? Nope, but I couldn't leave you hanging. And now, as I promised earlier, it's time to discuss the cameras, an Achilles heel where previous ROG phone models failed to impress. But they didn't need to do that because those previous ROG phones had the sole purpose of being the best machineries for mobile gaming. The thing is that the new aspirations of the ROG Phone 8 Pro to be a good all-rounder, including for everyday activities, entail higher expectations in terms of cameras. And with that said, I report that Asus has resolved one of the biggest shortcomings of the series and finally mounted a telephoto lens on the ROG phone. And it's not just a simple 2x telephoto, but they went all in with a hefty sensor for this focal length, a 32 megapixels, and with a generous 3x optical zoom. The results are good, the colors are relatively natural, and the dynamic range is wide enough. Also, a 30x digital zoom is possible, but I wouldn't recommend it because the details get lost in the wilderness. This focal length also uses 4-in-1 pixel binning for more brightness, so the resulting pictures will not be 32 megapixel, but 8. This translates into an okay level of detail, but nothing spectacular, and quite good performance even when the sun goes down. I couldn't find any menu that would let me modify the settings and shoot with the telephoto lens at maximum resolution, but even so, the pictures are surprisingly good. And now I want to turn our attention to the main camera with a flagship-grade Sony IMX890 of 50 megapixel sensor and the lens with f1.9. In good lighting conditions, the phone managed to produce some truly remarkable images. The level of detail is right, the colors are accurately rendered, and the white balance is correct. When the sun goes down, the difficulties increase for any phone, but the ROG Phone 8 Pro has a special weapon in its arsenal, a gimbal system for the main lens. Basically, Asus took the gimbal optical stabilization system from the Zenfone series, refined it and brought it to the ROG Phone, a first for this product family. This means that the sensor can stay as still as possible when trying to gather light for a nighttime photo. Low-light photos are far superior to those taken by the old ROG Phone 7 in almost all areas, from detail to dynamic range. And finally, the 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens is nothing special. It has a wide angle of 120 degrees, but the photos are not the brightest, and on a closer inspection, problems with the level of detail can easily be observed. However, the images are certainly usable, and if you find yourself in a situation where you need to use the ultra-wide focal length, you won't have any problems. On the other side of the phone, we see an improvement in the selfie camera, which now has a wider angle than the previous model, from 73 degrees to 90. This means you can squeeze even more friends into the frame when you need to, and the quality of the photos will not disappoint you. It's not on the level of an iPhone, but it's certainly better than what we've seen in the past from the ROG Phone. And with that, that's pretty much it. In conclusion, I would say that Asus has hit the mark in their mission to create an all-around good ROG phone. It's more elegant, has a set of cameras far superior to previous models, and all the while manages to retain the top specifications and extra features for gamers, as well as the dedicated accessories that are part of the DNA of this series, such as this Active Aero X cooler. The new ROG Phone is available in 3 configurations: 12 gigs of RAM with 256 GB storage, 16 gig RAM with 512 GB storage, and the beast here with 24 gigs of RAM with 1 TB storage. But the key question is this: how much it costs? Well, it's pretty much as I expected. It starts at $1,100 and the beast over here goes up to $1,500. And now, please tell me down below in the comments section, what do you think of the new and less than usual shiny ROG Phone 8 Pro? As for the performance, which we are not allowed to give numbers and scores, so until new orders you will have to take my word for it, could it be the beginning of the end of Apple's domination on this slice of brute power? And last but not least, do you like the look? Do you think Asus made a good choice when they decided to tone down, to soften the flashy design we had become accustomed to from this series? That's it for today. Please subscribe to Techniqualities, and I thank you respectfully for that. All the best and good luck to you all.